ChatGPT, a human cell, and Karl Marx walk into a bar.
Welcome to The Big Puzzle. In this podcast, we explore the subtle connections between science, religion, politics, economics, and history. One piece at a time, we unveil the big picture of this shared experience that we call life.
So for this one, I had to shave and cut my hair a little because people were starting to ask me if I was planning to write a second Communist Manifesto. No, I'm not Karl Marx. I do have a job. I provide for my family and I shower every day. So today we're going to be connecting three pieces. The first one is socialism, at least one aspect of socialism. The second one is the process of aging. And the third one is AI and the future of AI. So let's start with the first one, socialism. We could be talking for hours about socialism, but today we're going to focus on one of its characteristics, that is the redistribution of wealth. So socialism always comes as a solution for a problem, and that problem is inequity. We've discussed inequity, in a previous piece of the puzzle, but for now, let's say that, inequity could be a problem, but socialism is definitely not the solution to that problem. So what socialism proposes is that, there's some people that have some advantages over others and they become more wealthy. And then you need to redistribute that wealth. It's not fair for people to have more wealth than others. So this idea of getting your fair share for somebody else's wealth is what they promote. And it works. It works really well, at least for the first 5 seconds. Everybody's happy. You get something that you didn't work for, that somebody else produced, but now you receive it as this part of this redistribution. Everybody's equal. We achieve that equity. Well, not everybody is happy, and that is the problem. The problem is that people who produce that wealth, well, they're not interested in the system anymore. So socialism is always downhill. It might look good at the beginning, but it's just because it's distributing things that it didn't generate. So you need previously to have a capitalism to generate wealth, and then socialism comes and solves this problem of inequity. Why is downhill? Well, like we mentioned, it's because the people who created that wealth, they don't have any incentives to create it anymore. So socialism kills entrepreneurship. It kills creativity. Why would you work extra hard to produce something that you would not benefit from? So if you remember our talks about inclusion and the examples that we put there, remember the guy with the 3 boxes? Well, what's his incentive to work for 3 boxes if they're going to be taken from him? This is the exact same process. And when socialists start failing, well, they need to blame somebody else. So socialism always necessitates an external enemy, somebody that's actually causing all your problems. And you can apply this to any socialist country in the world. They all follow this pattern. Some of them faster, some of them slower, and we will explain why they happen at different speeds. But they follow the exact same pattern. So at some point, the system needs to be propped. It needs to be propped in many ways. Economically, you need to start rationing, printing money, creating inflation, and all those things to create this illusion of distributing. You're distributing things that are less and less valuable every time, but with the hopes that people won't notice. And also it has to be propped socially. And that requires the use of force many times. Well, many times not. Eventually, all of them will require the use of force. Socialism always requires put more and more power in less and less hands. and that devolves into authoritarianism. That might last for generations. We've seen examples of that are still, alive. With you have an elite, extremely rich, extremely powerful, and a completely impoverished population. That is unavoidable. Luckily, eventually will collapse. All of them will collapse one way or another. So with socialism, it's not the question, it's not a matter of if it will collapse, it's about when. If a country is rich to start with, and I will put the example of Argentina, that like I mentioned in a previous video, they have this flavor of socialism similar to fascism that's called Peronism or justicialism. Well, it took, I don't know, 70 years, over 70 years, because the country is so rich that you could always steal, the government could always steal from somebody else. But eventually, yeah, you run out of people to steal from. Other places like Cuba or Venezuela, well, their collapse has been much faster. North Korea is another example, because they don't have many natural resources. It just required for Venezuela to have a drop in the price of oil, and then all the socialist redistribution system collapse really, really fast. And hyperinflation, poverty, starvation, crime, powerful elites. So all those things happen really, really fast. Some other places, like North Korea that I mentioned, are also experiencing this. And some other kind of mixed systems. China, I think is still there. It's so big, it has so much inertia, but they had to abandon some of the premises of pure socialism or communism as international socialism, instead of some national socialism like we discussed with fascism or Nazism. They're kind of there, but again, a completely authoritarian state where you're monitoring for everything that you do, that you say. You don't have any freedom there. Today is election day. When I'm recording this, I don't know what's going to happen with the elections, but I'm really worried. I'm really worried about some of the proposals that particularly one of the candidates has been pushing for, that really are socialist in nature and will hurt everybody in this country. And since the United States is so important, it will hurt everybody in the world. Oh, well, that's about socialism. The second piece is the process of aging. And we are going to try to answer this question. Why do humans last for millennia while individuals only last for less than a century? So why could, the group thrive while individuals wither? And the answer to both is DNA. So DNA encodes our physical uniqueness, our physical individuality, and our physical diversity. So everybody that has lived in this world and will live in this world will have a unique DNA. All these molecules that are organized in a certain pattern, well, those patterns are different for everybody. When a new life is formed, and that's why conception is so important, and we will talk about abortion probably sometime, but every new life is unique. Have never been somebody exactly like that, and will never be anybody exactly like that. For that to happen, you need to have this process of having a mother and a father. So each of them contribute 50%, a random 50% each time of their DNA to create a new DNA. So that refreshes the DNA over and over. The theory of evolution also explains how mutations could have a positive effect sometimes in improving or making the new generations more fit to their circumstances, to their environment. Right? So, but that concept of mixing the DNA, it's so important because it refreshes it. It creates new life. It creates new opportunities. So that's why humanity thrives. Humanity it keeps progressing. But what about humans? We also have DNA, right? Well, that is a problem. We get that nice DNA when we are conceived, then we start developing, we start growing, and maybe you don't know this, but there's very little in you that was with you when you were conceived, well, when you were born, or in any other previous stage of your life. We're constantly being renewing ourselves. So this finger here, it looks exactly like the finger that I had 10 years ago, but so many cells have died and been replaced by new ones that basically I don't know how much of this finger is the same one that I had. Isn't it amazing that we're basically not the same people. We're constantly changing. There are some parts of us, in our teeth, some brain cells, some heart cells, and some parts of in our eyes that they don't change, but the rest of it is constantly being renewed, and that is awesome. For me, it's one of the strongest arguments towards God and being created, and we will discuss that extensively hopefully soon enough. But for now, let's say that this also comes with a problem. The problem is that to recreate ourselves over and over, our DNA has to be copied over and over. And since systems are not perfect, they will make tiny mistakes. So each time that a cell is formed, there's a chance that the DNA will be worse than the one that is copying. Could be just, I don't know, a gamma particle in the universe hitting, at the wrong moment. And these mistakes could be as bad as a cancer, that will propagate really fast and kill you, or could be just normal aging. So everything in you starts getting worse and worse, performing worse and worse. And there's no way to reverse it because it's just the accumulation of millions, billions, I don't know if even trillions of small mistakes made when the DNA is being copied. So that's why we age. That's why we become old, and that's why we eventually die of old age, when our DNA became corrupted enough that it cannot sustain life anymore. Now, the third piece that will connect the other two, and that is AI and the future of AI. So I've been looking at the field of AI for a long time. My father, he was an expert in the late 70s, early 80s, even publishing some books on AI and these first concept ideas that were so advanced that the computer power was not there to even test them. And you have great minds like Marvin Minsky, that created all this, the Society of Mind, and all these theories around what constitutes intelligence and how can we use computers to replicate intelligence. Unfortunately, there were not much progress, even with very fast computers. We couldn't get much farther. And I think that I can see why language processing and language generation. The problem was that investigators were trying to replicate how language works. And they were first trying to look at different languages in different parts of the world and see what they have in common, and try to identify patterns and syntax, and how can a computer generate those same patterns and those using the correct syntax and so on. And they faced many problems, one important one was that when computers talk, they forgot really fast what they were saying. Right? So they talk, and midway through the sentence of the paragraph, they didn't know what they were talking about. And they couldn't figure that out. They tried to implement algorithms that would look back and see, okay, what I was talking about, what I was saying. But again, nothing seemed to work. Nothing seemed to solve that problem of the AI, the computer, losing the context about what they were saying. Now, the biggest revolution, and I don't know if they did it on purpose. If they did it on purpose, these people should deserve several Nobel Prizes altogether. at once delivered in a truck. Or if it was by chance, well, that was extremely lucky. And that's the algorithm called self-attention. Because self-attention stopped focusing on the language, on the syntax, on that stream of words, and start focusing on the connections. And that is where the breakthrough came through, because the idea for AI, or the solution for AI, is not to replicate language, is to replicate the mind. And language is a manifestation of the mind. Actually, language is a bottleneck for the mind. Let me explain how I define the mind. A mind is just a connection of concepts that we all have in our brains. So since we're born, and probably before we're born, we start gathering information and we start finding patterns. And those concepts that we learn, they reside somehow in our brains, and they are connected. So when you are thinking about a dog, there's some other concept. You also connect it to a sound, that is a dog barking, right? Or you with an image of a dog running. So all those disconnect things get connected more and more. Some things that you've never experienced are completely extraneous to your brain, to your mind, and then it takes some time for you to understand them and to create those other connections. And those modifications of the connections is what we call learning. So every time that you learn something, you're changing those connections and those concepts. Sometimes you're cutting connections, right? When you realize that something that you believe was wrong, or you're creating new connections, when you realize that some things are actually connected. That is really the key of the issue of artificial intelligence. How do we replicate a mind? Then, if you think about it, the language is how we navigate those connections in that network to express something. So, since those connections are multidimensional, there's no way that you can express them all at once. So, you need to somehow linearize them. Right? You need to grab one connection, one concept at a time in a way that makes sense. And that goes to the recipient, and that would affect their mind, because what you're saying is actually changing their connections that they have. So that part of communication, again, is the bottleneck. It's just a way that the mind can linearize, can create a one dimension stream of concept from that complexity. If you think about poets, so poets are people who could navigate those connections in unusual ways. And they would say things in a way that is not trite, it's not normal, let's say, when your brain is decoding that stimuli that it receives from trying to, I want to say untangle, but find that new way to present the connection between this concept, that creates pleasure. It creates that sense of learning, of growing, right? So that's why poetry is powerful. Self-attention is the algorithm that allowed models to learn how things are connected. And then, funny enough, the language is just a way for the AI to say, okay, which is the next word that would make sense now? Just it's making that decision. Say, okay, I said this. What would be a word that would be good to put now? And they have a probability. Okay, I have these 200 words, and they have, okay, this one has a 95% ranking, and this one has a 3%. So it chooses which word to put next. And even stop talking is one decision made by probabilities. So at this point, it would make sense for me to shut up. That's how AI, I mean, this is obviously very simplified, but for you to have an idea how it works, it's the creation of that mind, and then how to generate language from that mind. That is the piece that will connect the other two. Now, to understand how these three pieces are connected, we need to understand how these AI models, come to existence. And those are generated by training. You need a training set. What is a training set for an AI model? Well, it's a lot of information. So you have encyclopedias, you have articles, you have papers, you have blogs, you have news, whatever, anything that people had generated, had written, had thought about, and put uh, available for the AI to learn, to create this mind, right? To create these connections. That's why the AI will never be better than the sources that it has, because it's just learning from them. It's not creating anything new. It's just processing and creating these connections. And sometimes when you see that the AI is biased, it's very clearly politically, well, that has to do with the bias in the sources. So if it's learning from, mainstream media, well, it will just replicate the mind of mainstream media. That is how AI models are generated. How does this connect with socialism? Well, if you replace wealth by knowledge, you would understand. So AI is just redistributing knowledge that was created by somebody else. So people have been writing papers, have been writing books, poetry, history, have been expressing opinions. They have been generating a lot of data, then knowledge, and then wisdom. And AI has been around grabbing all of that and creating this model. The problem then is that AI would give you for free, let's say, something that was generated by somebody else. So now people, instead of going to read articles or papers or books, they will just to go to ChatGPT or will go to Gemini or whatever, Grok or whatever they're using, and ask questions there and get the answers. Or even worse, some of the papers, some of the articles, some of the books are actually written by AI. So you don't have any incentive as a human to generate any more knowledge, any more wisdom, even any more data. Why would you just feed an AI model that will give you anything back? So that is the same process that happens with socialism. Now you're discouraging the people who generate that wealth, that knowledge, from doing it. So everybody will become dumber. Nobody will become smarter than the AI. But the problem, to make things worse, is that the AI will become worse itself. Why? Because what happens when you need to train a new generation of AI? In which data will be trained? Well, it will be trained in the data that was generated in a previous version. And then the next one will do the same thing. And like we were explaining, and this is how it connects with the process of aging, there's some inbreed component of all of this. Right? So each new generation is worse. Each copy of the AI is worse than the previous one. So, like socialism, this will be becoming worse and worse. And like aging, it will be killing itself. It will be self-cannibalizing and killing everybody in the process, killing the wealth creators, the knowledge creators. And so I hope that it doesn't follow the pattern of socialism in the sense that, well, now it needs to prop itself. And I think that is happening. So you know that some people are actually using AI to promote certain things. So it's not just a pure extracting, albeit biased data, but it's just promoting certain things, certain ideologies. And you probably saw when you asked them to generate images of people, then they would not be accurate to history or anything like that, just promoting ideas. And that would make a very little number of hands very, very powerful, like in a socialist system. And for the rest of us, we will be very knowledge poor. We'll become, like I say, dumber and dumber every day. I don't know what will happen. I really hope that is not what happens. I think that the worst case scenario is that AI actually develops the ability to become creative. And that's what we call the singularity, when an AI is suddenly more intelligent than everybody else. This looks very bleak. And what is the solution for this? I don't know. I hope I did know. But thinking about what could be a solution, the book Fahrenheit 451, Ray Bradbury, came to mind. And if you remember, at the end, people decided to become themselves the books. So while the government was burning the books, kind of an AI killing the knowledge, people were memorizing those books. So they became the recipients, the repositories of wisdom. So if I could give you homework for you and for myself, can we try to do that? Can we try to be repositories of wisdom? Can we interact with each other in a way that we learn from each other and not from the phone of or the computer? Can we keep that richness, diversity alive? This quote came to mind: teach one another words of wisdom. Yea, seek ye out of the best books words of wisdom. Seek learning, even by study and also by faith. Well, I hope you enjoyed these 3 pieces of the big puzzle. If you did, as always, I would invite you to subscribe and consider sharing it with your friends. And, well, see you in the next one.